Hi, and welcome to Skeptarchy, the podcast that covers pretty much everything with anarchist and skeptical lens. I'm Cory.
I'm Dell.
Kevin. I'm Kevin, that's Dell.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And it sounds like we all have something to talk about, so.
Indeed.
Yes, we're also prepared.
There's just been a lot of news.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so what I wanted to talk about today is the topic of weight in sports. This happens especially in women's sports, but it does happen in some men's sports too. Like there have been male figure skaters, for example, that have talked about being forced to be anorexic during their competition. Like during their competition years. So, you know, talking like at least high school through whenever they finally retire, usually, you know, due to injury or whatever. Because it turns out that people are bizarrely obsessed with weight, even when they shouldn't be. And there's no real good reason to be. I know that's a shocker, but it's really shocking to me how insidious it is in sports, because I feel like sports has such nice, concrete, measurable outcomes, right? And so couldn't we all just be pretty evidence-based? And like, I know there's all the bullshit about like cupping and weird stuff like that. And, you know, all the way down to just like people with their lucky socks. But like when you're talking about like, I think it's obvious that like sports science has gotten better, right? Like we've gotten better at nutrition, we've gotten better at training. Like there's a lot of real evidence-based stuff that's gone into sports stuff. But especially in women's sport, there continues to be, and like I really did not realize this at all until a couple years ago. There's this obsession with getting people, in certain sports especially, getting people thinner and thinner and thinner, even if it really doesn't have anything to do with their performance. And to me, it is just, I mean, isn't that so obviously ridiculous to think that like you should only eat 500 calories a day, even though you're doing physical training 12 hours a day? Like if I ate 500 calories a day, I wouldn't even be able to milk my damn cows. How would someone be an Olympic athlete? Like, just imagine how much better these people could have been if they weren't literally anorexic. So one of the people that's recently spoken out about this, it's actually like over a year ago now, is named Mary Kane. In high school, she was called the fastest girl in America. She was recruited for Team Nike. And when she got to Team Nike, he was having every single female runner do public weigh-ins and then berating them about their weight and telling them all they needed to lose 5 pounds, 10 pounds, 15 pounds, because if they weighed less, they would run faster because there's less weight to carry. And like,
that's not true.
That's not exactly how muscles work. Like that's not how that works. So people developed, you know, severe health problems from this. And eventually the coach was investigated. Nike did not release the results of the investigation, but the coach had already been fired because he got caught up in a bunch of doping shit. So not a good guy all around. And like, obviously, I think we've all heard stories of coaches just being generally horrible assholes. Yeah. And things like that. But this obsession with weight is really interesting. And it really put a point on it to think about all these athletes. Like most of the athletes that go to the Olympics are not in sports where you make a living. Like they're not like football players, right? Where you make a good living playing football, right?
Right.
And you have like a team organization that's like self-sustaining, that is hiring nutritionists and coaches and all of that, right? Most people, like the people that play tennis, the people that run track, they're like good in high school, good in college, and then organizations sponsor them. So like there is a lot, like there are so many good athletes that don't get to compete if someone decides they're not sponsoring material. So like this is where racism can come into play a lot. So like you might not get sponsored if you are a black athlete in what's not typically considered a black person's sport. or not like a Black person's event in their opinion. Right. And if you don't have the look that they're looking for, because all these human biases are coming into play when they're deciding who gets to play. So I want to look up another name. Another person who spoke out about this recently was Taylor Townsend, who was a Black tennis player. And so the U.S. Tennis Association picks people to sponsor, and that's how they get to go compete in international competitions. And she says, the title of her article was, "I was fat and I was Black, so they took away my dream." So basically, she was the top tennis player and the favorite, and they basically told her that she didn't look professional enough to represent the USA. And I think we're probably all very familiar with like Venus and Serena Williams and the kind of bullshit they put up with.
Yep.
Despite being, you know,
the best
Serena being the arguably one of the most dominant athletes of all time, right? And still subjected to all these stereotypes about like, well, you can't be a good athlete if you don't look like a model. I don't know. It's just so confusing to me because it's so illogical and it's so ridiculous, and like it just breaks my heart for all these people that like could have been just incredible athletes, and because it just
yeah, with certain exceptions, this is almost certainly misogynistic.
Yes,
you know, like this is definitely a patriarchal thing. I remember a while back there was a karate Olympic dude, martial arts or whatever. And I was shocked because at the time I was still learning about gaining weight and muscle building and whatnot. And he was an Olympic martial artist and said he had to consume, when he was training, he had to consume 12,000 calories a day just to maintain his weight. Mm-hmm. Like, so if they have like professional athletes or quote unquote amateur athletes at 500 calories a day, like that's like death's door. Like you're not a healthy person at that level.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's well known, and I have actually known this since I was in early high school, seeing some of the more intense female athletes around me, like stop menstruating and stuff. And like, that's because your body is shutting down. And that was like a mark of like, you must be really putting a lot of work in, you know?
Right. Yeah. It's, yeah, it's bizarre, eh? Your body starts malfunctioning because of the work you're doing. And people are like, hey, you're putting in that work. Good job.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's not like this doesn't affect, like I said, so there was at least one male figure skater that talked about that. You know, maybe men's gymnastics might have some similar issues because it tends to be sort of aesthetically focused. And of course, I think most of us are probably familiar with even like wrestling at the high school level, just like terrifying levels of disordered eating, at least.
Yeah, because those guys, they always had to like, they always had to bulk up and then they cut.
Yep.
Yeah. They always had to cut like crazy and then eat again after weigh-ins and like. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so one of the other things that I found, which is just, if you weren't already upset, which I was very upset, they did some studies on this, and I found this on like an eating disorder recovery website. They've done some surveys of several hundred coaches. 60% of coaches were encouraging disordered eating.
Oh, God.
In their athletes.
Somehow I'm not surprised by this because, of course, they were. But yeah, disgusting.
It's just, and it's so upsetting to me because it's so illogical, because the entire point is to perform well at sports. Like, if you're not feeding your body energy, you're not going to perform well at sports. And I just don't understand how people could have such ingrained, horrible ideas about weight that they get fooled into thinking that this is a good idea in any way, you know? So that's my rant for the day. It's, and I want to point out too, because I've been involved in a lot of discussions about like, when you start talking about trans folk in sports, and then people start talking about, which I have a million thoughts on, and people start talking about, well, yeah, because like women aren't as good at these things as men are, so you got to give them their own category. hey,
Sigh.
maybe this is one of the big fucking reasons. You know, like if you don't let the women eat food, you know, how much is that impacting their performance on things? You know, there are a lot of implications of misogyny that result in this that aren't necessarily from some sort of like physical inferiority. And I think this is one that's really, really fucking obvious once you start to listen to the people that have been involved in it.
Yeah, because it seems like the aesthetic angle, like you have to look a certain way, your body has to fit a certain mold, that's going to apply to women across almost every sport that they're involved in, where men might get away with certain sports, it matters more than others. Like, but I don't know, all of the athletes probably have to suffer to some degree, but yeah, it smacks of patriarchy to me.
Yeah. Anyway, that was my whole topic. That's what I got.
Yeah. So, from my end, also involving sports, specifically the Olympics, so there was an event that happened fairly recently where two Namibian women who were running in a qualifying event ended up having like incredibly low times for their 400-meter sprint, right? So much that this triggered a medical review. And both of these women, who are both 18 years old, which is like a huge thing for them to, you know, be getting like this low time at that age. I think they were, you know, they're literally record breaking in that regard. Right. So these two women turned out to have naturally high testosterone levels. Now, because some World Sports Authority has decided that in order to run in events between 400 meters and a mile,
only those events, though.
Only those events.
Those.
Weirdly, you cannot have a testosterone level above a certain amount, and they specifically say, and I'm quoting here. They specifically say that no female athletes would have a level above that cap unless they had a difference in sexual development or a tumor. That was literally what they said about this.
Which is obviously false.
Yeah. So I have some major issues here. The first one is that this is inherently transphobic bullshit.
Yep.
Because, like, these testosterone level tests were very likely put into place just to exclude trans women from competing. Despite the fact that trans women who have been on HRT for long enough typically have lower testosterone than cis women doing the same things. So it's complete and utter bullshit. Second is, you know, just the straight up bioessentialism of this nonsense saying, well, you know, unless you have, you know, these disqualifying conditions or whatever, you're not going to have a natural level that high. I'm like, do you realize how variable the human body is? You're literally just looking at this point for things to rule out runners from being able to run with their natural abilities, which is the whole point of, you know, sports competition, is to put humans to their maximum, you know, under training, you know, basically figuring out how good humans can physically be. And now, just because these women have a higher hormone than most, like, obviously they're already exceptional. They're already making world-breaking times in these events. I'm like, so of course there's going to be some exception to their biochemistry. You ruling them out for that is just bull.
And there's no good reason to focus on testosterone, because there's actually virtually no correlation of testosterone level with performance.
Yeah.
And then we just have this like weird patriarchal like pop science idea that like testosterone is the muscly hormone or something. But like they've done studies of male athletes, and like the testosterone levels did not correlate with higher performance at all.
Yeah. No. And then add to that the fact that these are two African women, so of course there's some racist bullshit going on, especially when you take into account the fact that, like, historically speaking, one of the biggest attacks against black women is that they're too man-like. So, now the fact that they're using high levels of the quote unquote male hormone to disqualify them just reinforces that even further. So that's a lot of fucking bullshit. So I guess both of these women have decided to go down to the 200 because, like I said, that specific range of 400 to 1600 meters, like that's the range that this particular restriction applies at. And I'm just
didn't they pick that range specifically to make sure that Caster Semenya couldn't compete?
I think so, because this is also the same rule that affected her back in 2009.
Right.
So, I fucking hate it, and it's just so goddamn frustrating, and it's like, that there is a commission full of white people somewhere who have never done any sort of medical science in their goddamn life that are making these rules about what women's testosterone levels should or should not be.
They're sitting around a table going, I think if they're doping, then this is probably the level that their testosterone is going to be at. Well, how do you know that? Well, I don't know. I just made it up.
Yeah, seriously.
And the whole reason that this bag of worms was opened is because some white athletes decided that Caster Semenya looked too masculine.
Right.
And they requested that she undergo a gender verification test.
Yeah.
Because
fuck you.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
And if that hadn't happened, looking at a picture of these two runners, I could absolutely see some white asshole thinking, "Oh no, they look too manly, so we need to verify their gender." It's some racist, transphobic, bioessentialist bullshit, and it needs to stop right the goddamn fuck now. In addition
but
to
also
that,
fuck the Olympics.
Fuck the Olympics, true. In other Olympic racist news, there is the first black Olympian swimmer from the UK who has now been disqualified, and I shit you not here, because of her hair.
What?
Specifically, the swimming cap that she uses to cover her hair has been disallowed from use because it does not form to the shape of her head. Because black women got hair.
Because she has hair.
Because she has hair.
She got disqualified for being black.
Yes, exactly. Precisely. Because her swim cap does not fit the shape of the human head because she got a little bit more hair than everybody else.
A little thicker,
thicker. So I've seen the pictures here, and so normal swim cap just, follows that. This one bulges just slightly in the back. It's barely noticeable. And yet, because of that, basically they're saying you gotta shave your hair or some shit to participate. I don't know. It's just, it pisses me the fuck off because I feel like they are just looking for any fucking excuse to keep black people from competing.
Yep.
Yeah, the Olympics have always had such a intensely narrow focus of what they allow and don't allow. That the problem is once you get even the tiniest bit of diversity, it starts pushing up on things that they never even thought about, and they are just a ridiculously slow and just upsettingly slow and I don't know what bureaucratic process to try to change anything. And it's just the perfect example. It's the perfect example of systemic racism, right? Because it's there's a system and the system can only react so fast. And the system never thought about the fact that you might exist in your normal human body.
Right.
Yep. Oh, and let's not forget, this is all the same organization that was we should totally have our events in Nazi Germany in 1936.
Right, yeah, you can't forget that part, right?
Yeah. Okay, yes, none of the people who made that decision are still alive today, most likely, but still, it's hard to forget that particular little bit of history.
Well, and it's not the rule where, that rule where you're not allowed to have any kind of overt protestation at the Olympics. Athletes aren't allowed to have political opinions.
Yep. Someone literally got disqualified for wearing a Black Lives Matter piece of clothing. I think it was a t-shirt or something.
Yeah.
Right, because how dare athletes be human beings?
No.
Right?
Yeah.
So
they have to be separate somehow.
Yeah. And in other depressing news, but for a completely different reason, the ocean is on fire.
Okay, so why is the ocean on fire?
All right, so there is a drilling platform off the coast of Mexico. And this platform, as I understand, primarily drills for natural gas in the ocean and sends that back via pipeline. That pipeline burst. And so now you have tons and tons of natural gas spewing into the ocean, floating to the surface, and all it took is one little spark. And so now you have this giant, bubbling pool of methane gas erupting from the sea and then immediately combusting.
Wow.
And the worst part is, so I've seen several pictures of this, and I kind of wish I could show pictures on the video, but I can't, so I have to try and describe it, right? So there's this large square platform, your typical ocean oil drilling platform, and then this gigantic pool, like probably 20 times the size of this tiny little platform in the pictures. And then there are pictures of these, two relatively large boats that are trying to spray water on top of the fire that is in the water. Like, they're trying to spray ocean water on the ocean fire. Like, the term futile has taken on a whole new meaning for me because of this. The even worse part is, in most of these pictures, there's a third, smaller ship that is also shooting water. This thing is so far away. Like, neither of the first two ships are actually hitting any of the fire part of the blaze with their water jets, but like this third ship is barely shooting past its own bow, just straight back into the water. And I'm like, what the hell is this? It makes no sense why it's just sitting here. Like, what are you doing? And none of these ships, not a single one of them was closer to the fire than the actual drilling platform. Like, that was the closest non-water object to this fire. All of it. Thank you. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So you can see the two ships at the bottom and the left of the picture. Oh, neither of their jets are getting anywhere close to that fire, right? But then you got that little tiny one in the background. What are you doing? What are you doing? And
what is that?
And like I said, none of them are closer to the fire than the platform itself.
Right.
It definitely looks like a badly photoshopped special effect, though, that fire.
I mean, I've seen the video footage. It's real. It's weird because it looks like lava erupting out of the ocean.
Wow.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be like a spawn point for some, the boss.
Yeah, that's some Pacific Rim bullshit right there. So, yeah, and right. What's more interesting is just, okay, I'm not a climate scientist, but I do have a decent understanding of chemistry and the greenhouse effect, right? So this is natural gas, meaning it's primarily methane. It hasn't been distilled and refined yet, so it's going to be other stuff, but it's primarily methane. You can see from the picture that there's it's not even really a smoke plume coming out of this. It's very clean burning. I'm guessing most of that's steam, right? Mm-hmm. So, they are trying to put out an ocean fire with water. Let's not forget that bit. But let's just assume that they were successful in quenching this fire. That has not stopped the leak. The leak is natural gas coming from an underwater pipeline. And if they were to if they were to quench the fire without stopping the leak, then instead of mostly carbon dioxide and water being put into the atmosphere, you have methane. And any climate scientist will tell you methane is a far more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide is. Yeah. So if they were to put out this fire, they would make the climate problem worse. I'm like, what are they hoping to do by quenching this fire? I don't understand that bit. It's not going to change anything other than cool things down in the region a smidge, but you're still going to have methane bubbling up. Any little spark is going to set the whole damn thing off again. What the fuck's what are you doing?
There's
flashbacks of the Deepwater Horizon spill. Gulf of Mexico.
Except it's worse because it's on fire.
Right.
Like,
literally
Deepwater
on
Horizon
fire.
was fucking bad. Like, that shit killed all sorts of ocean life. And
Yeah.
I don't doubt this is probably having a similar effect, though we don't know. I'm waiting for, like, underwater footage of the leak, because I'm sure eventually they're going to send a sub down there to take a look if they haven't already.
Remember when the BP CEO during that said he was really sad because all the media attention was making his life difficult, and that's why he'd really like to get the leak under control? Like, he publicly said that. I was reminded of that the other day.
Yeah, that's
probably not what his PR agents recommended that he say.
Yikes,
He
man.
was having a really difficult time, guys, okay?
He was having a really hard time.
I'm just gonna quickly share the video with you guys of this this ocean water.
Oh yeah, this is
Holy
gonna be good.
fuck.
Yeah,
It does look like molten lava.
Yeah, this looks like a spawn point for a kaiju. Like
That's crazy.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely looks
ocean-
like some end times shit.
Yeah, that just looks like a goddamn underwater volcano, okay? Yeah. So that's our
Yikes.
world.
That's fun.
You know, where drilling for fossil fuels has overridden all basic sense of our entire corporate oligarchy. Not to say that they had sense to begin with, but, you know, any little bit of sense they did have, whoop, out the window.
But our profits.
Yep.
I'm so sorry, I cannot stop
our
yawning.
profits and American energy independence. Drill, baby, drill.
Right.
Sorry, had to do that. Also, if I haven't already mentioned it, we are recording on the 4th of July. Fuck America. That's all I had to say about that.
Yeah, luckily where I record is insulated from the fireworks noises, so.
Yeah, luckily where I live, no fireworks is going off. Probably because I'm less than a mile from an Air Force base and they kind of frown on that.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
That'd be my guess. But hey, I'm not complaining. Like, don't get me wrong. I love fireworks. It's pretty. I enjoy it. But, like, people take it too far in a lot of cases. And, yeah.
I haven't been in years. I like them, but just like there's always such a crowd situation that it just doesn't feel worth it.
Yeah.
Corey, did they do fireworks for Canada Day? What do you do for Canada Day? I mean, I know you're not doing Canada Day this year, but
Yes,
thank God.
they normally do, but this year, no. Almost every community, at least in Saskatchewan, canceled fireworks for Canada
wow,
Day
they
this
even
year.
canceled like their celebrations.
Yep.
That's a good sign, I guess.
I mean, it's at least acknowledgement.
Canada, you racist fucking place. Someone needs to do a parody of "Oh Canada" and the Star Spangled Banner, for that matter. I'm sure it's been done. I just haven't done the legwork to find it.
Yeah.
Although I did see a great video the other day that was of a Native woman singing to the tune of "This land is your land, this land is Native land." Then later
Nice.
it turns into "This land is stolen land" with some very good lyrics. So yeah, that was enjoyable. And then one last thing I have, because it is specifically relevant to us who are all doing recording with this software. Audacity has been bought out by a company who is also makes something called MuseScore, which is a free, I shouldn't say open source scoring software. They did this actually a couple of months ago, and they ended up making a number of changes to this open source software. First, they are requiring that all contributors to the software sign a license agreement that essentially gives this company intellectual property rights to any and all code they submit. The second thing, and worse, is they have added tracking software to Audacity. So now, instead of just being a purely offline audio editor, it does things like call homes and tracking your usage of the software and all that shit, presumably for, capitalist bullshit purposes. So there's currently a number of people who are making what are known as forks of this software, basically just because it's open source, taking that turning it into a new project, so I will be keeping an eye out for whatever fork ends up gaining popularity to get away from this hellscape that we currently live in, and hopefully not have to stop using Audacity, which is a great software. Luckily, if like me, you are very slow on remembering to check for updates, and in Audacity's case, it does not automatically do this, you're probably fine. My build is from mid last year, well before this happened, and I have no reason to update it.
Yeah, I've never updated mine.
Yeah. So if you haven't updated it since, since May, you're probably fine. But there are repositories with older versions out there that don't have all this spyware crap.
Nice. That's
I'm just
nice.
trying to, I wonder which versions, because I've got a relatively new version.
So basically, when you go into Audacity and look at the build information at the very bottom, there'll be a program build date. If it's
April 13th, 2021.
Okay.
That's right on the
I
edge.
believe that was actually before the buyout happened, so you should be fine. They didn't actually add in any of this code for for a month or so.
Right. Yeah, and then they just released the information about it 2 days ago or something, wasn't it?
Yeah. So, just if you use
Don't
Audacity, don't update. And if you really need to update for some reason, look for a fork. Because, that will likely not have the shit. So yeah, those are my topics.
Yeah, I think just for the one I found, some people were talking on Twitter about a version called Dark Audacity.
Yeah, my understanding of Dark Audacity was that it was just meant to be like a dark version of the application, but it is forked from an older version before the change, so you can certainly go with that.
Cool. Okay, so I guess we'll go with my topic now. We kind of touched on it with the Cancel Canada Day. The reason that Cancel Canada Day was canceled, in case anybody lives under a rock, there was 751 unmarked graves found on the former Maryvale Indian Residential School in Saskatchewan in the Cowessess First Nation. Yeah, that's 160 kilometers just east of Regina. It's just, it's kind of north of where I grew up. It's, 751 cases, unmarked graves is quite a few. That actually brings the Canadian total up over 1,500, if I understand correctly.
Yep. That's what I've heard.
So, I don't know. A lot of people are fucking pissed. A lot of people are really sad and hurt. And there's been some, well, I'll use the legal term of vandalism of Catholic churches. But I consider it art and justice and of people like painting churches with hands and with words like we were children and things like that.
And tearing down statues of the fucker who invented the residential school system to begin with. Yeah,
Sir John A. Macdonald, the first prime minister and the architect of the residential school system.
Yeah, some of the photos I've seen of the vandalism are really moving.
Yeah.
Really impactful.
And as I understand, the Vatican still hasn't said a damn thing about this. Or at least not given any sort of apology.
Not an apology. I think they made like a super wishy-washy, terrible statement.
Like it's terrible that this has been done, but we accept no responsibility for it whatsoever, despite the fact that almost all of these schools were run by the Catholic Church.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I even saw some stuff about some medical experiments they were doing. Some of them.
I'd be surprised.
Yeah, I don't recall seeing that.
It was about food starvation.
Sense. Yes.
Like they were experimenting with feeding people not enough food and seeing how it affected the children's growth.
The thing about the residential school system is that if you can think of an awful way to treat children, then they did it. if they thought that starving children would do something, they did it. If they thought beating them would do something, they did it. And I don't know, it's
I don't know. I just ran into someone the other day that was surprised how fucked up Catholic schools were. Like, my own grandmother had being left-handed beaten out of her. Yeah. Because it wasn't allowed.
Because left-handed was of the devil.
Yeah. So she got her ass kicked if she tried to write with her left hand at all. Like, It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, there are people who have been burning down old Catholic churches that are on reserves, and I'm in favor of that. I'm not going to say that's bad. In fairness, I think most of the burned down ones have already been abandoned, so they're not like in danger of anybody being in them. But
they need to have some fucking consequences. I just don't know.
How will that ever happen, eh? So I guess just a couple things. This archdiocese in Regina gave the Cowessess First Nation $70,000 to help restore the gravesite. So that's good, I guess. In BC and in Saskatchewan, the Catholic Church, whoever's in charge in these two regions, has said that they will release the documents of who was at these schools so that we can actually name these children at some point. I think we talked about this when the stuff in BC was discovered. There's like, in Saskatchewan alone, there's like 7,000 kids missing, so that were never accounted for. So, having at least the documentation can maybe help some of these families deal with that.
It's just horrifying.
Yeah.
Did I ask, were either of you raised Catholic?
No, I wasn't.
Remember. Yeah. Yeah, I went to Catholic school through 6th grade even. Nobody was allowed to beat anybody anymore, but that just got lucky. Lucky to be...
Just a matter of timing, right?
Born at one of the few times when going to Catholic school wasn't going to be a horribly abusive situation. I mean, I don't think the Catholic guilt complex has done me any good. So still plenty of therapy I have to do, but... Yeah,
like Catholic schools are still technically publicly funded in Canada. We have what's...
Seriously? Even in Canada?
Yeah, like it's a separate school system, but when all the property taxes are gathered together, you can, on your forms or whatever, you can say, I want my money to go to public school, or I want my money to go to Catholic school, or the separate school system. And the separate school system
is Saskatchewan that heavily Catholic?
Not particularly, but it's a carryover from back in the days when it was supposed to
be like a state church kind of thing.
Yeah, it was supposed to do a couple of things, and part of it was to help protect Francophones, keep their culture, but because they were heavily Catholic.
It's heavily ingrained. We're a heavily German Catholic population, so it's very intertwined with like all sorts of cultural aspects. There's a big conflict. All we have is German Catholics and German Lutherans, and I legitimately thought those were the only two religions for a long time, right. Or that they were definitely the two main Christian religions or the only Christian religions. And the Lutherans were like really liberal and wishy-washy compared to us Catholics. So of course, that's what I was told. But I think that the symbolic power of the churches being burned down is really powerful. And it's kind of the only outlet people have for... I just can't imagine the level of rage people are feeling because it's not just murdering kids. Everything that those schools represent was destroying a culture that in a lot of ways things have been lost that can never be got back. Yeah.
There are literally languages that are gone forever because of this program, right? Mm-hmm. Like there are people who are struggling to keep the languages that did survive alive. Mm-hmm. So it's, we call it a genocide. It's a genocide.
Yeah. I just, it's so infuriating. It's beyond words. And I'm not even, of a group that's affected by it directly, and it's so upsetting. And
me and my co-host on the my Saskatchewan Politics podcast, we talked about this a little bit, and we kind of said, I don't know how much to say about this. I don't have the actual words to really express this properly. Except to say that don't go and ask your Indigenous friends for help understanding this. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Instead, go and find Indigenous voices that are already out there and listen to them and try to empathize and understand what they're saying. Because there are a lot of amazing Indigenous content creators out there who are talking about this stuff. And yeah, I mean, they're all over TikTok. They're all over Instagram. They're all over, they've got lots of great Indigenous-led podcasts. So I'm just a white guy. So don't listen to me about it. Listen to the people who are affected.
If people are listening from the US, there's a podcast that I listen to because it's on the Archaeology Podcast Network, because it's, you know, a cultural anthropologist is who runs it, so it's sort of in the cultural zone, but it's called Heritage Voices, and she interviews Indigenous people, and she's mostly in the US, but certainly a number of Indigenous folks from Canada that are actually involved in cultural resource management / archaeology, because archaeology has had such a problem with colonization.
Right.
And she's interviewed
anthropology too, actually.
Yeah, so she's interviewed too, like brought Indigenous people together from like different parts of the world together in one conversation, like Indigenous people from New Zealand, from Australia, from all sorts of different places, because they're facing, you know, similar problems from colonizers. And I think it's really interesting because I feel like so much of the story that Indigenous peoples have to tell is one that's it's one story, right? The whole, like, it's one story going back all the way. And like the only people doing the studying of it for so long in like an academic way were rich white people, rich white guys mostly, right? Yeah. And so it's just like so important to try to support the Indigenous people who are reclaiming that, from their own perspectives. I just wish it could happen faster and with more people, but
yeah,
we genocided them, so there aren't as many of them left to do it, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's it. It's a tough spot to leave a show on with talk of genocide and finding the bodies and finding unmarked graves and stuff, but unless somebody has something else.
Happy Canada Day and 4th of July. We did the genocides.
Canada and America Delinda Est.
Yeah. Yep.
So.
Okay.
Cheerful. Cheerful ending.
Indeed.
It's I mean, I guess we're not quite done, but it's one of these things where like it's tough to talk about, right? But has to be talked about.
Have either of you ever been to the Holocaust Museum, Kevin, maybe?
No.
It's real, and like I've got plenty of empathy, but like I almost threw up several times going through the Holocaust Museum. It's very visceral, like it's made to be that way on purpose. And I saw an interesting tweet the other day about like, of course we have a Holocaust Museum in DC because we didn't do that one. Like we didn't do that genocide, you know? And this is the type of thing that, you know, why isn't there something like that? Like the Holocaust Museum, like obviously I know not everyone gets to go, but there are significant, like it's a well-funded endeavor. There's a significant push to get, you know, hundreds of thousands of school kids go through it every year because it's right. People find it to be very important to tell that story in that very, very visceral way. And it's like, you know, why are we not doing that for the Trail of Tears? Why are we not doing that for residential schools? Why, why are we not doing that for Japanese internment camps or any of the other terrible things? And it's because we did those. So we don't want to be uncomfortable. But another tweet that I saw is if you're learning about history and you're not really uncomfortable and really sad and really angry a lot of the time, then you're probably not learning real history. Like you're not learning the real picture because like that's not how the world works. And that's certainly not how history worked.
No, that's right. Okay. If you want to find more from us, you can find us at skeptarchy.com. Our Twitter is at skeptarchypod. Our Facebook is facebook.com/skeptarchy, or you can email us at skeptarchy@gmail.com.
You can find me on Twitter at AncomPsychom or on Twitch at Anarchist Laboratory.
I'm on Twitter at More Cowbell and on Facebook as Dell on Earth.
And I'm on Twitter as at Skeptical Lefty, and facebook.com/CJBrainstorm is where you can find me on Facebook. Well, thank you for joining me this evening. It was a fun conversation until my topic.
Well, yeah,
we'll
that's what it is when you cover the news. It gets dark.
Yeah. It always, although, as dark as the ocean on fire is, it's also really interesting and really visually stimulating. So, yeah, at least we got that.
Indeed.
All right. Goodbye.
All right. Good night.
Bye.